Now, it's my privilege to announce our keynote speaker and introduce you to her. Meghan Achimasi is a prominent leader at Norfolk Southern, serving as a Group Vice President of Chemicals. In her role leading a $2 billion business unit, she focuses on enhancing commercial solutions and driving strategic initiatives across the company. Throughout her 21-year career at Norfolk Southern, Meghan has been instrumental in implementing effective processes and fostering a collaborative work environment. Her expertise not only helps optimize commercial results, but also promotes workforce development and mentorship, reflecting her commitment to nurturing future leaders in the transportation sector. She's earned recognition within the industry, and most recently, she was named the 2024 Woman in Rail honoree by Railway Age. Meghan is a proud double Hokie, earning a BS in Marketing Management from Virginia Tech in 2004 and an MBA in 2010. She supports community service through volunteering at her church and serving as vice chair on Virginia Tech's Executive Advisory Board for our Center for Business Analytics. Meghan resides in Atlanta, Georgia, so she made the trek up from Atlanta yesterday to be with us, and we thank her for that. She lives with her husband, Ted, and their two young sons, Luke and Ethan. So please join me in welcoming Meghan Achimasi to the stage.
Thank you, Jay, and I might need you. Well, good morning, everybody. Oh, we can do better than that. All right, please hold. All right, I think in Blacksburg, the best way to get audience participation is through some forced engagement. So let me hear it this side. Let me hear it.
Let's go!
And one more time, just like we're in Lane.
Let's go!
Somebody could have told me I had the sign upside down. That would have been more effective. Thank you. Thank you for humoring me. I did not have the sign upside down on purpose, but thank you very much for having me. Thank you for the warm welcome, which sounds like something ChatGPT wrote, and that may have occurred, so thank you for that. I am so happy to be back here in my alma mater, double alma mater. I'm Hokie through and through, as you can see. I've been at the same company for 21 years, which is pretty unusual. I would say as an undergrad, you hear that you'll probably work for 5 or 6 companies across your career, but if you land at the right one right out of the gate, you can ride it out. There's another colleague of mine whose start date coincides perfectly. Luke Nichols in our audience, our Senior Director for Investor Relations. We started the same day, so our claim to fame is that we still have a 100% retention ratio in our management trainee class because both of us still work at the company. So you guys are data analytics students and professionals, so you know what the ratio will go to if one of us changes our mind. But I'm really proud to be here today. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things, but I want to start out a little unconventional. And anybody, show of hands if you've taken a public speaking class before, and they tell you, what do? You tell your audience what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. But I think that sounds very boring and predictable. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to say. And so here are the top 3 things you're not going to hear coming out of my mouth this morning. First of all, that I built a dashboard that did anything cool. I've never built a dashboard. I'm a consumer of a lot of dashboards. We have hundreds, if not thousands of them, probably too many. I consume a lot of information, but I've never put one together. I'm not the one that builds it. I've never taken the classes in R or Python that you guys are taking, but I will say I was a student of Cliff Ragsdale, so I feel like that gives me some street cred for that. But I'm not going to talk about my dashboards. I am not going to talk about the fact that I combined our data warehouse and our data lake environments to create a data lake house. And nobody in IT will tell me where that lake house is. I'm really curious. It's apparently a real thing. I got some slides from my colleagues in IT as I was building this presentation for the data fabric and everything we're working on, but I'm not going to talk about that, but other people at our company could. And finally, I'm definitely not going to talk about my team's use of the medallion architecture and our transition of data quality from bronze to gold, which won us an Olympic medal. I frankly don't really even know what that sentence means, but we have a whole team of people that are working on improving that. So now that I've told you what I'm not going to say in all those buzzwords, I'll tell you what I will talk about this morning. How our corporate strategy to safely deliver reliable and resilient service, drive continuous productivity improvements, and achieve smart and sustainable growth is driven by a robust digital strategy. I'll also share some use cases across our company in commercial, operational arenas that are driving success at a transformational rate. And that impacts our employees, our customers, our investors, which Luke cares a lot about, and the communities in which we operate. And finally, I want you guys to leave today knowing that this is just the beginning. We're a company with 200 years of history and a noble purpose going forward. And if I look at just our AI business cases alone, we have 70 use cases across multiple business functions. So that is what I'm going to talk about today, and let's dig right into it. First, you need to know a little bit about Norfolk Southern. I was interacting with a student this morning, Acadia. Are you out there somewhere? There she is. She wanted to know what it is that we do. We are a railroad. We're a freight railroad. Our history goes back actually to Christmas Day, 1827. Almost 200 years later, we still serve essentially the same purpose that we did then, but we do it in a lot of different ways. But we move goods, we move the American economy by the freight that we support for our customers. So let's go into a brief history, and then we'll talk about these use cases that I know you guys want to hear about. We're about a $12 billion company. That puts us around 300 or so in the Fortune 500 rank. We have a large, robust steel and automotive franchise, as well as chemicals. We move a lot of products from the chairs that you're sitting in today and the foam, the cushions that go into those foam, to all of the components in the cars that you drove to get here. And any Chick-fil-A fans in the house? Norfolk Southern last year moved enough potatoes to supply every Chick-fil-A in the United States twice. So we move a lot of the products that you are using every day and you probably don't even think about. We say 1 out of every 5 vehicles that's on the road today has somehow touched Norfolk Southern, either in that we move the vehicle itself or the parts that go to make it up. And of course, you need to know our vision. It's to be the safest, most successful transportation company in the world. I note I don't have to look at the confidence monitor for that. They told us that day one out of the gate as interns. And both Luke and I both had internships in our belt too before we started full time. It's ingrained in us, along with our core values. If you want to understand more about this, you can check it out on our website. But essentially, we are all about serving our customers and always improving. We do the right thing. We do what we say we're going to do, and we're better together. We are a team of 20,000 employees, and we operate over about 28,000 miles this side of the Mississippi in 22 different states and DC. You probably want to know also a little bit about the railroad industry in general. Some quick facts. I took these off of the Association of American Railroads website. They're a group that looks at the mutual benefit of railroads across the US space and does some lobbying in Washington to make sure all those folks understand it too. Freight railroads are privately owned. They operate on over 140,000 miles in the US. And importantly, your tax dollars and mine do not go to support that infrastructure. Railroads invest entirely in their own infrastructure. And for Norfolk Southern, it costs us about $1 billion every year just to maintain our line of road. That's rails, ties, ballast. Some of the use cases I'll talk to you today about data analytics go to how we optimize that capital that we put into the ground. We're sustainable. We are 4 to 5 times more efficient than a truck and about 30 times more efficient than a Honda Accord, in that we can move a ton of freight 485 miles to the gallon. That's pretty good. That means that there are less trucks on 81 than there need to be. If you look at the US railroads in 2021, based on the number of freight cars that railroads originated, 1.5 billion tons of freight moved in the US. It would take 83 million more trucks on the highway to support those goods and that movement. We move about 40% of the tonnage that moves in the United States. And we move a lot of the exports. We've talked about food, we talked about Chick-fil-A, we talked about potatoes, drinking water. Anything you can think of is likely has either something on the raw materials side or the finished side that probably moved by rail. And we have a deep history of innovation at Norfolk Southern. Now, I'm going back 100 years when we were actually the first to begin using diesel locomotives. And just 30 years later, which I know sounds like an eternity now, but Southern Railway, one of our predecessor companies, was actually the first to transition completely to diesel, which was revolutionary at the time because most of the railroads were still using steam. 1965, this gentleman and some like him were apparently among the first companies, Norfolk Southern, to begin using computers. And we did that in network operating centers, then and now. Then is on the left, now is on the right, and that's an actual picture of our 24/7 network operations center, which exists in our state-of-the-art headquarters that we just opened in 2022. This is a LEED Gold certified building that I've actually had the opportunity to host some other students who happen to be directly across the street from our college at a university, which for now shall remain nameless, another engineering school, but they were blown away with the technology in this building. Also includes a daycare, a gym, a whole cafeteria. You can do everything but basically sleep in this state-of-the-art building. So that's where we've come from. And you need to know also about what is our strategy for where we go beyond. We've talked a lot about history, but past is prologue. So what are we doing going forward? We delivered a strategy and are delivering a strategy that every day is devoted to reliable and resilient service performed safely for our customers. We are devoted to continuously improving productivity in processes and systems and delivering smart and sustainable growth. The beauty of these components of our strategy, which of course is supported by a multitude of other pillars, and digital transformation is one of those, along with our employee talent base, is that many of the things that we're doing are not supportive of just one element of our strategy. So if the commercial team is working on how we grow business sustainably and how we incorporate carbon emission savings for our customers, it's also helping on our productivity because we're also using biodiesel to fuel our locomotives at a 20% drop-in rate. I will tell you, the business cases that I'm going to talk about this morning, spend a few minutes, some of them relate to AI, but not all of them do. I know that's a topic that a lot of people talk about in the field of data analytics. You'll hear from other speakers today about it. For AI use cases alone, we've found over 70 business cases. They range in feasibility from really blue sky to some things that we think have some low-hanging fruit. Obviously, we're going to do those first, and of course, we prioritize all those business cases based on feasibility and their impact to the business. And I think the most important takeaway on this slide is that they are over a number of arenas. Half of our AI use cases involve operational excellence and improvements in processes and systems. The other half are really things that you might think of as traditional back office, whether it's commercial, legal, HR, finance, labor relations. So the field of use cases is broad. So now that you kind of understand history, where we're going, where our strategy is, I thought I would take about 5 or 6 examples and give you real-world, practical industry knowledge of how a corporation incorporates this in what they do day to day. I tried to kind of neatly fold these elements into the pillar of our strategic plan that they relate to, but it's really impossible to separate, and that's a good thing because everything that I'm going to talk about railway track predictive analytics and predicting failures before they occur, also translates to help our customers achieve better service, more predictable service. All right, so here we go. This is a cross-section of rail. Unfortunately for us, these colored indicators, which are just illustrative, is not what happens. We don't know by visual inspection with the human eye how much the head of the rail is wearing down over time. And it varies based on a lot of different factors like curvature of the track, the weather, the type of freight that's moving over the system. Is it a corn train? Is it an intermodal train? There are a lot of variables that go into understanding this. We have geometry cars that collect billions of data points about a section of track. And keep in mind, I told you we have 28,000 miles of track. Times billions of data points is a lot of data points. Our data science team cracked the code using machine learning so that we can predict in advance how this rail is going to wear. Why is that important? Because I told you we're having to spend $1 billion every year to invest in that rail and to make sure it supports smooth operations. And I want to make sure that we deploy that capital at the location that needs it first. So that's one business case of how we're using our linear assets, the track that is on our roadway, and how predictive maintenance helps solve for that. In addition, we have installed an industry-first autonomous tracking system under locomotives. The first example I talked about is where we use geometry cars that go on track inspections separately. What's neat about this is our team in engineering, who is best in class, designed a way that we could inspect track while at the same time hauling freight. So instead of having to create a window for our engineers to be out on the railroad, we can be hauling a freight train and inspecting track at the same time, and the results speak for themselves. We've had over a 40% reduction in both rail service failures and nearly that same amount in reduction in track geometry defects annually since 2015. We are using data, using billions of data points, machine learning and AI to get better at how we provide service to our customers, which of course opens up capacity for us to grow. Now we need to talk about locomotives a little bit too. Locomotives cost anywhere from $3 to $4 million a pop. We have 3,000 of them, plus or minus, and they each transmit about 350 diagnostic sensor data points as they're moving. It's kind of like Tesla in terms of the instrumentation inside of a locomotive. But our locomotives need to last a long time. Obviously, a $3 or $4 million asset, you want to last over their full life of 25 to 35 years. I want to walk you through an example that is about losing cooling water in an engine. Now, I am not a mechanical engineer. I'm sure there's some in the audience who probably would love for me to talk about the specifics of the cooling water and process. But what I am is a frequent flyer on Delta. And so the analogous example I'm going to give you is who's been on your flight, you're already buckled in, you're ready to go, and the captain comes on and says, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we have a malfunctioning piece of equipment. We're going to get mechanical to come out. We don't know how long it'll take, but just sit tight." That is the equivalent of the losing cooling water problem. For a locomotive, this can be catastrophic because the engine will shut down. For a passenger on a Delta flight or any other railroad, or any other airline for that matter, your catastrophic failure is that they say, "Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to deplane, grab all your bags, go with you." And then what happens? The entire network for that airline is impacted because it's not just your flight, it's not just the flight after you, it's the connections, it's passengers all over their hubs. The same thing is true for us. If we get a train that's delayed and that locomotive won't work, we need to get a locomotive from somewhere else. Well, we got to rob Peter to pay Paul, get a locomotive from somewhere else. And because this is continuous track, it's going to back up our network. We have developed through our data science team an AI model that can predict water coolant problems on average 1 week before it happens. And astonishingly, I think, it does so with 95% precision. This is a process that's actually been in production since 2018. Mabi Amui, our chief data scientist, who you'll hear from in a couple minutes in a video, was integral into solving this issue. And another item that I think is probably the most exciting, this is something that is a game changer for our industry, and Norfolk Southern is frankly leading the industry on this, is digital train inspection portals. Inspections today are done with conductors who are standing along our track, and it might be in the middle of December in Fort Wayne, Indiana at 2 in the morning. You can imagine what that conductor can see on a train that is sitting still. Keep in mind, he can't do that inspection at a dynamic rate of speed because he's got to catch up with the engineers. Train is stopped. Now I want to talk about how we're doing digital train inspection using the new technology that we have in place.
At Norfolk Southern, we are going to set the gold standard for safety in the rail industry. Our digital train inspection portals, or DTI portals, are a very important piece of that mission and that vision, and the equipment has really taken shape over the past 4 years.
Three main components that come together and create this beautiful end-to-end process. There's a hardware component to it, the cameras, the lights, the tunnel. There's a software component, which is effectively the brains behind these portals for the very robust AI algorithms that look at that imagery and analyze them for potential emerging conditions. And finally, there's people, and they all come together to create this beautiful end-to-end process.
This is a project that we've been working very closely with one of our partners, the Georgia Tech Research Institute.
Who are the true imaging experts in the field, and they've taken this technology to another level, and we're proud of the outcome.
So this technology is designed to help with the finding part of safety. So to look at the equipment and identify conditions that are either hard to see or impossible to see from the vantage point of a human being, take that information, turn it into actionable data.
We effectively get this 360 imagery of every rail car that passes by at up to 70 miles per hour. And on average, we take about 1,000 pictures of every single rail car. As AI identifies these emerging conditions, we make that information available to our railroaders within a matter of minutes, and then go and proactively address those issues before they become a problem for us.
And limit the exposure of our employees as well. Keeping them off the main line and focused in a yard or a terminal environment, that's in the best interest of their own safety.
All this process end-to-end enhances the work of our railroaders and helps us turn the finders of defects to fixers and enhance the safety of our operations.
Thank you. I'm always also just really impressed when a video and audio work perfectly in a presentation setting. So kudos, Luke Williams, on getting that set up. That is the future. We actually have queued up 16 fully inspected, fully automated inspection corridors that we're going to roll out between now and the end of 2025. We've already deployed a few of these in Ohio and in Georgia, and I gotta just say, I'm sure if our state-of-the-art headquarters was in Blacksburg, we would have worked with Virginia Tech on the train inspection portals, but the fine team at Georgia Tech Research Institute was incredible to work with, and we've got a great outcome. And we have a history, as we'll talk about, working with teams at Virginia Tech as well. All right. I got to talk a little bit about marketing here because we said we've got business use cases across our company. We covered operations, we covered our movements, we covered our track assets and our locomotives. What about our customers? What are we doing to help them grow, and how are we digitizing that effort? Well, geofencing and GPS is here. We have geofenced the totality of our network. We've mapped entry and exit points for our locomotives, which is useful just to know the full view of our network, but it is incredibly useful to developing predictive ETAs. If you think about, if I know when a locomotive enters and exits that customer property, and I know how long that took, the GPS, remember, from the locomotive is sending a signal every 3 seconds. Combine that now with GPS devices that we're putting on rail cars, And what we want to have is a solution that's as easy as your Amazon package to track. And we're using a lot of digitization across our company to achieve that. We're also testing a broad array of sensors on rail cars themselves. We talked about locomotive assets. We didn't spend a lot of time on rail cars. We have our own host of rail car equipment that we use to move customers' freights, like hoppers and gons and Aggies, but our customers also have a lot of rail cars. Tank cars, Norfolk Southern owns very few tank cars. All of the chemicals products that we move in shipper-owned or leased equipment. And we think a game-changing impact to the industry is having sensors on as many of these types of equipment as possible to minimize the defects before they occur, which of course is a virtuous cycle for other customers, because if I'm not having to set out a car for a defect on customer A, that means customer B's traffic will also not be affected. We've actually done some benchmarking and other consumer tools you might be familiar with. If the screenshot on the left looks like Domino's Pizza Tracker, it's for good reason. We've had consultants who've helped us benchmark those consumer-facing technology, and we're putting that into the palm of our hands of our customers. Why? Well, there's manifold benefits to safety and performance, but there's also tremendous opportunities to grow. We talked about how many trucks that we need, 83 million, to handle the business that rail already provides. And we want to be set up to grow with the economy. We are located in 9 of the top 10 fastest growing states for economic development. Where's Meghan? We got an economic development audience here too, and we proudly support that with new and expanded industries. We're also using digital innovation to drive real estate transactions and new customer developments. We launched Insights about 3 years ago. Think of this as a Zillow-like tool for railroads. We have 800 sites cataloged on this tool, which means our economic development partners and new customers, and you, it's free. You could log in right now and check it out if you're looking to get into the rail shipping business. It gives them a sense of what's available for their expansion plans. We are also doing a lot of great things for the environment. And I want to take a few minutes as I wrap here to talk specifically about environmental stewardship, what our company is doing, and how that is promoting a sustainable future. We actually launched about 2 years ago a next generation carbon calculator. Now, why am I talking about this on Day for Data? Because behind this carbon calculator is a matrix of 30 different products that we move, 75,000 cities, and 7 million shipments, which means if our customers want to understand how their shipment of corn that moved from the Midwest to the Southeast for consumption, how much carbon they avoided by shipping by rail, they can do that at that granular of a level. Sustainability is something that you hear talked about a lot now, but I will say Norfolk Southern was green before it was cool. We actually launched our first sustainability report in 2008, and we named the industry's first chief sustainability officer in 2007. So for folks that are interested in working at a company that's doing a lot of good for the environment and the community, I'll tell you, I'm very proud to be part of Norfolk Southern. And we've also recognized customers in the industry. Our first inaugural Thoroughbred Sustainability Award winners are shown in this slide. Some of these are household names and companies that you interact with, do business with regularly, and we recognize them for their efforts. And finally, kind of closing out with the discussion today about analytics and sustainability and driving positive outcomes. You might not have expected a railroad presentation to include a discussion about oysters, but we can, because we were actually part of a living shoreline restoration on the Elizabeth River. We've planted 20,000 new oysters. We've also restored the living shoreline, received national recognition for that project. And in South Carolina, we host the largest population for the eastern cockaded woodpecker, which is a threatened species. We've preserved 13,000 acres in a conservation trust. And all of that also feeds our ability to provide shippers with sustainable solutions. Why? Well, when you plant 1 million trees up and down the Mississippi River, that develops carbon credits. Those carbon credits then are available to customers to use, offsetting their own emissions. And 90% of a company's emissions, the average company, is through their supply chain. So as Norfolk Southern stands as a supply chain partner, ready to support to the extent that they have carbon reduction goals, zero-based targets, we stand here ready to deliver, and with all of the data to support it, so they can share that with their communities. I hope you have some questions after hearing about this and have at least got an interest sparked in freight railroading and Norfolk Southern and what we do for our communities, customers, employees, and our investors. I just want to say also thank you to Virginia Tech. We have a proud partnership with Virginia Tech. We hire a lot of Hokies. They're right across the street from Georgia Tech, but we need more Hokies. So please come see Callie at our table afterwards and hear about some of the opportunities we have to offer. We've participated in 4 capstone projects since the inception of the MSBA BA program. And I'm just gonna say it today, triple diamond. I don't think that's actually a name we give anybody, but for 3 years running, we have been a proud diamond sponsor for Day for Data, and prediction, I think we'll probably be back again. So looking forward to that. We are all in with Virginia Tech, and I'm all in with Virginia Tech. I married a Naval Academy grad, but I converted him to a Hokie too. He went back and got his MBA also with Dr. Ragsdale teaching him. So two proud Ragsdale graduates in the class, and we're obviously got 2 up and coming here that we're trying to make sure they know where is the right school to go to when they're ready. So with that, I'll just say thank you and happy to take any questions. I think we've got another 20 minutes or so if anybody's got questions. I see a hand. I don't know if that was purposeful. Well, there we go.
I need a reality check. I am a professor of data science at George Mason with my lovely wife over here. I'm also a PhD student of Cliff Ragsdale and Alan Abrams.
There you go.
So if those 2 gentlemen can get me through at my advanced age, all hell to them. Fantastic. I think I live in an ivory tower. I've been trying to come to this conference for a couple years. You know, we teach the theory, here's the real stuff. So hats off to Norfolk Southern. I mean, I'm OD'd already. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I do have a specific question.
Okay.
I remember back in the dark ages, I bought my first GPS unit. It was like $8,000 and did nothing. So I'm very interested in the GPS miniaturization. I've been to a lot of weird hobbies that use the GPS. Fantastic. Can you explain to me what geofencing means? Remember you were talking about GPS and how that was being used by your train company, but you had the term geofencing.
Yeah, and Acadia could probably
heard of that.
So Acadia, she's got a minor she's pursuing, I think, in GIS, right? So we have a GIS team at Norfolk Southern that maps our network. It used to look like in the 70s and 80s, valuation maps that were paper copies. What we've done is we've transitioned to digitizing that so that the graphical information system that we have that's overlaying our 28,000 mile network is also talking, and we recognize where that geofence ends, that's our property, where our customer's geofence begins, and we know then when that rail car crosses over it. And if the locomotive, that's got GPS device on it already. So that tells us a lot about the consist that's on the train. We're taking it a step further by suggesting, and doing more than suggesting, we're putting our money where our mouth is, that rail cars also have GPS devices, which then allows you to ping and you know where they are and when they've crossed the geofence and whether it's ours or theirs. So that's kind of how all of that is working together, and why then folks like Acadia will not have to work on Val maps when they graduate and come on board. Great question. Step right up, thank you.
Hi Hi, Megan. My name's Meredith Johnson. I'm a Virginia Tech class of 2015 alumni for Industrial and Systems Engineering, and I'm also a big Oyster fan, so thanks for that. My question specifically is about your discovery process. So you had mentioned that there were 70 AI use cases that you all identified at your company. Could you talk a little bit more about how you all went about identifying that and bringing it up and leveling it up to those 70 that you identified?
That's a great question. So I think the way this happens, and I say think because I haven't personally been involved in the evaluation criteria for the use cases, but we have a data science team that is a central repository point for our AI use cases. So operations, marketing, HR, anyone that has an idea for how we might incorporate AI as a part of what we're doing would bring that to Mabby, the gentleman that you saw in the video, who also spoke at Virginia Tech's first ever Day for Data. He and his team of a dozen or so data scientists would look at that and then work in partnership with IT to understand broadly where does it land on the matrix of feasibility, how long to implement it, and what's the business impact. So I would say it's a very consultative process. While I haven't been involved in it, I know for sure anything that they've identified of the 8 marketing use cases are also being vetted by the commercial teams, so we understand how we would kind of evaluate those and what comes first. And to be clear, there's some of those 70 that we might decide to never do because the business impact is not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. But that's a little bit about the process that we use, and the data science team serves as our go-to team for that. Any other questions? Brave souls? I like that hustle, thank you, that's nice.
Good morning, Colin Chu, Solutions Architect for Amazon Web Service, also a Hokie, just by the way. So first off, thanks for talking today, and I really see that you guys have really started to operationalize your data and actually getting effects from your data. So first, like, what would you say to people who are, getting started in that domain? And then the second question is, when you're storing, bringing in all that data, and actually using it and sharing it, what's your plan and what's your strategy for that data? Thank you.
So I received 75 slides leading up to this presentation today that answer the question about the strategy towards our data and the migration of what we use today to new platforms. I'll say Amazon Web Services is, we're a proud user of that, and I think looking to probably do more than less. So what I would say is, for somebody that's getting started, you have to understand the elements of the corporate strategy first before you go down the path of creating the AI use case. If I don't understand how digitizing our network or doing digital train inspections is going to help our customers, then I really can't provide the most beneficial impact for the company, because the company has limited resources, fixed budgets, and will have to go to the board to request additional capital. So that means only the best projects survive. So I think the starting advice would be, make sure you understand where those projects fit into the corporate strategy as you evaluate them, and have a strong policy for data governance and all the foundational elements that you need as we do go from bronze to gold. Apparently we're doing that, but I can't really tell you from my commercial standpoint the ins and the outs of all that, but I bet Keith knows. I bet some other IT people in our 20,000 team know how we're doing that. But I know it's a very methodical process, and there's Gantt charts that I thought might be a little overkill to share with the group today, but pretty robust planning process for how we're getting to where we need to be. Any other questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to Jay and just say thanks again for your engagement and great questions this morning. Appreciate it.